Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another episode of LVAD Talks. Today, I have the good homie, the partner in crime, John Sanson. We already have a little connection with the whole technical cameras and getting in trouble spending money in Amazon thing. So this should be a fun conversation. How you doing today, son?
Doing good. How are you?
I am awesome. So let's get into what we're here for, and then we might end up talking about cameras and stuff.
All right, let's get started.
All right. So how did you learn that you had heart failure? And was it something new or an ongoing issue?
And it was something new. So back in 2016, I went in for a GI scope, and we came out with what we thought was just complications from anesthesia. It didn't end up being the heart failure, like symptomatically coming in full-fledged in 3 days. So I went from no symptoms to all symptoms within just a few days. So I didn't know I had heart failure at the time at all. So it was just something routine and ended up coming like, hey, you have heart failure.
Wow. So were you physically active before this?
Yeah, I was working full-time, working about 50, 60 hours a week at the time, managing coffee shops and stuff like that. And so I didn't know I had heart failure. And it wasn't until I said, after that procedure, it's like, oh, you have it. Here you go.
Wow. So how long after that was it before you had to get an LVAD?
It was about 4 years between the time I was diagnosed in 2016. Sorry, 3.5 years. Between 2016 and September 2019 when I got my LVAD. That we tried different medications, we tried different therapies. Actually had 3 different heart failure teams. I went through those years and all came to the same conclusion that I would most likely need to end up having an LVAD or transplant at the time. Like I remember even after my first diagnosis of heart failure, like they said, you're going to have coronary artery disease, you're going to have blocked arteries, which I had none. They did a heart cath, and while I was still in recovery, they're like, they just laid it on me, you're going to have an LVAD or transplant one day. Like 5 minutes after having my first heart cath.
Okay. So did your health decline during this period?
It did. I was stable for the first few years, but the last year before LVAD, so 2018, 2019, you can see a significantly increase of me sleeping a lot more and being fatigued. I was still working full time, running and managing somebody else's business. But it got to a point where I would sleep on the weekend just to work my 40 hours during the week.
Okay.
I put my family aside, unfortunately, and gave everything I could to work because I was the sole income at the time.
Right. We're gladiators.
Yeah.
That's an ongoing theme I'm finding, especially with the men that I interview. We're so busy, trying to be the provider and take care of the family. A lot of times we don't pay attention to our own bodies.
No, that's one thing I got myself in trouble to. It was probably back in September of 2018. My boss, the owner of the business, my wife's like, yeah, you got to take a week off. They literally booted me out of the business just to go take a week off, just to relax and trying to recover.
Yeah.
They told me to decline every call from the shop, everything like that, just to go focus on me. So yeah. I called myself the workhorse because I would just push past how tired I was or how fatigued I was, how much horrible I felt health-wise just to get the job done.
Yeah, and we all do that. We all do that. And because you don't want to seem like you're weak.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me the story about the LVAD. Was it a procedure and then they decided to keep you, or was it an emergency situation?
It was kind of a mixture of both. September 4, 2019, I went in for the right heart cath. I agreed to go ahead and just do all the workup for LVAD. I originally was, even in the office, I said, I don't want the LVAD. I'm just going to get the testing just to kind of make you happy. September 4th, went in for the right heart cath and got told, hey, you're not going home. You need something to keep you alive. So over the next 3 weeks, they did all the emergency testing to get me to where I can have the LVAD. Even to the point where I needed milrinone just to get my heart functioning, just barely keeping me alive. Because the previous month, I was told I only had 6 months to a year to live.
Okay.
With have assistance. So yeah.
Did they tell you what your ejection fraction was?
Yeah, so they could not actually get a good read. So every report since 2019 up until this last month said below 20%.
Okay.
And even with the contrast, because of how big my heart was from the dilated cardiomyopathy, they could not get a good read.
Wow.
So it could have been down to 5%. We really don't know. We just know it was below 20% and that they just couldn't get anything from the echoes.
So where did you have your surgery?
September 24th. So it's literally 20 days between the heart cath and my LVAD surgery.
No, where?
I had a Memorial Hermann here in Houston. That's where I had my original LVAD surgery.
Okay.
So they're one of the little bit older teams here in Houston, and one of the more, there's 3 teams. I've now seen 2 of the teams, and they're one of my favorites. Yeah.
Okay. So you got that 3-week vacation where they did all the testing on you, huh?
It was ED testing. It also had a gastric sleeve at the same time, so it was.
Oh, you did yours at the same time?
Yeah, they did mine at the same time. So my driveline site was actually where they went in for the gastric sleeve. So where most people have their driveline on the left side, I actually had mine on the right side. So.
Wow. So they didn't tell me this.
That was the fun part of my surgery. So I had not just one recovery with LVAD, but I had the gastric sleeve at the same time. So I had 2 different lifestyles that I had to relearn.
I had to change, right?
Yeah.
I'm going through that process now, and the way our system works is I had to take these classes for 6 months. So I'm looking at having surgery in June or July. But I would love to have it all done at the same time.
It was a learning curve, and it hurt. How to get out, but it was totally worth it because part of my journey now is I lost 150 pounds to get by transplant this last month and a half, but because I went almost a decade from talking with the resident at the time when I first had my LVAD surgery, when I first got diagnosed with heart failure, I probably had heart failure for almost 10 years that went unsymptomatic. So my metabolism learned how all the bad habits and storing energy just to make me function as a living being. So pretty much I had to have the sleeve to reset and reboot my system, my metabolism to get back to a normalcy versus let's store all the energy to make you live.
I so wish I could have it done at the same time because then that's just one recovery time.
Yeah. It was a challenge, because for me, you're learning how to relive life with a 8-pound bag hanging off of you.
Right.
Chest incision, but then you also have to relearn how to eat. So it's this weird progress. It's something that I'm grateful for, but also I wish the opposite for me. I wish I had 2 separate surgeries.
Okay.
It was such a huge adjustment for me.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why they do it the way they're doing it with me, where I have to take these classes. So, I'm trying to get into the mindset of changing my eating habits now. So by the time I have the surgery, I'll already be used to it.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is the eating habits is the biggest thing. And make sure you're especially getting enough protein, especially post gastric sleeve, that is huge for my weight loss. I've seen differences. I stalled out after the 9-month mark. I lost 100 pounds and I just stalled out for almost 6 months after that. It's just what the heck's going on? And it's doing blood work. Hey, your protein's low. Let's increase your protein. That was the biggest thing is making sure I get enough protein and not just the carbs and stuff we're used to sometimes as American eaters is we're used to sandwiches and bread and pastas and trying to break those bad habits.
Yeah. I'm going through it now. I'm taking the protein drinks in the morning and I'm trying to get used to it. And the way they're doing it with my surgery is 2 weeks before surgery, I need to start an all liquid diet.
Yeah, that's the most non-funnest thing is all the liquid diet.
Yeah.
Broth and clear liquids.
Yeah. But we're going to do it. We're going to make it work because, that gets me better chances to get the transplant.
Yeah.
So I would like to see after surgery, I'm going to work hard and I would love within 6 months to a year to be able to get my transplant.
And that's where I've seen a lot of people that have been very successful with gastric sleeve to get their transplants. because I think you're part of the LVAD Friends. There's a lot of people gone through the same process, and that's how they got through their heart. Even it's like just that 30 pounds, like the last little bit to help them get to their goal, which is let's live life with a transplant. Like, this is a great tool to use. I think some people may see it as, oh, it's a cop out, but it's really not.
Yeah,
it's how to get you to where you need.
And I feel you on that, because when I first got my LVAD, I was like 300 pounds.
I was 350.
Yeah, and so I weighed myself today at the gym, and I float between 245 and 250. But I've kind of stalled out. Like, no matter what I do, I'm not getting below that 245.
Yeah, and this is where that will help you get to that. Let's say past that stall, because that's where, like, when pre-gastric sleeve, no matter how much dieting I did, no matter exercise I did, like because of my heart, my body learned that, hey, we got to store all this energy just to get you functioning.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what I did, it just went move forward. And I'm not sure if it's the same way with you. Like, like no matter what you do, like, is it just stalled out, or did your metabolism learn a certain way because of the heart failure?
Right.
So,
yeah. So let me ask you this: once you lost all your weight and got your transplant, did you run outside with your shirt off and flex?
I haven't done that for yet. I'm still in recovery post-transplant, like, just right now. Like, it's been kind of amazing just because I'm like, hey, I don't have to buy the 4X shirt. I'm now buying extra large shirts.
Yeah.
So now it's kind of working with my gastric team to actually hopefully eventually get removal, because that's one thing kind of holding me back. And also hopefully build up some muscle once I can actually start cardiac rehab again. Just because I was going to the gym 3-4 times a week until probably about December, when I had a driveline infection. And COVID hit a little bit harder here in Houston. So it's just like I had to back away from the gym. So I'm ready to I'm just that motivated person, like, let's get back, get some muscle going, and start showing the flex, and let's get cool. So that's my big thing, is hit that 3 to 6 month mark with a transplant, and let's jump in the pool.
Yes. Oh, I'm with you on that one, bro. Yeah. So I was similar. I started working out not last year, but the year before last, and I got to the point where I made it a habit where when I dropped my kids off from school, I would go to the gym. So, every day was the same time, and I would do an hour, maybe 2 hours at the gym. It was terrible at first. I hated it, but I just kept going and do a little bit more and do a little bit more. So after a couple months in, I was starting to like it. I didn't realize I liked it, but I was starting to like it, right? Get all the way around, and then COVID hits. So I had been working out for a good year solid, and then everything had to stop. And now it's like, I got my vaccination last month, and I just started going back to the gym this week. And unfortunately, it's like I got to start all the way over again.
Yeah. That's what happened to me. Like, when everything hit here in Houston, like higher numbers, it's like, man, I had such a good pace and such a good rhythm of like, here's my time, here's what I'm doing, here's my calorie count, here's my deficit, let's keep going. Then I just hit that wall, and it's like, man, how do I move forward from here sometimes when I can't go to the gym?
Yeah.
So for me, I found an app called Ultra. So I started hiking a little bit just to get outside, get the blood moving, keep walking around, burning the energy versus just sitting at home. So that was kind of my little like hump to get past until the gym's opened again.
Yeah, I've got a treadmill, but I ain't used it much. It's just, to me, I think it's the environment of being in the gym that helps me stay motivated. It's like harder to really concentrate and do it at the house.
Yeah.
I'm like,
my wife, she works out. We have a little creative room space. This is where she does her workout, yoga, stuff like that. For me, I'm like, I got to be out. That's what I kind of love, working on camera, stuff like that, bringing on hikes. It gets me motivated just to be out in nature. And I enjoy it a little bit more because I like the sweat. I'm here in Texas. It's always hot.
Yeah.
So like the 2 weeks during the winter. So yeah.
Yeah, I just need that change of environment to be motivated. It helps.
It does.
And then you see other people doing stuff and you be like, I think I could do that.
Yeah, it's like where I watched another Instagram TikTok guy, cruise ship.
Yeah.
Watching him like do the weightlifting and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Like he kind of motivated me. Like I started when I was going to the gym, like doing leg press and stuff like that. I was like, let's see if I can press myself. And then started doing the arms a little bit more.
Yeah.
Get more confident to actually go like, all right, I got this bag with me. Let's see what I can do versus what I can't.
Right.
So then another powerlifter a few years ago who got a transplant, like he was kind of big on YouTube, showing his workouts, stuff like that. But yeah, having somebody else kind of young, kind of semi my age, and I was like, man, I can do that. That kind of motivated me. That's what kind of pushed me in the gym as well, because I saw other people, but nobody else had a bag with them or had something that they work.
Yeah. Shout out to Crew 72. How you doing, homie? All right, so let's get back into the LVAD story. So once you did your 3 weeks, you had your LVAD surgery. What was your recovery like? And how long did you stay in the hospital after your LVAD surgery?
So my recovery was kind of rough for me personally. I was in there for 2 weeks. I got discharged. I was back in the hospital 24 hours later with pulmonary embolism. Yeah. So I was staying with my family up in the north side of Houston. At the time, I lived like an hour and a half south of them. So we were kind of staying between two places. And yeah, I had a pulmonary embolism at home at my grandmother's house and had to call ambulance and be rushed an hour away from where I was staying back to the hospital and med center. Yeah. The other thing that was kind of rough is my incision decided not to go right. They tried to use sutures into surgical glue to keep it together, and it just did not heal well. So they had to redo my incision. So besides just having the original LVAD surgery, 2 weeks later, they had to recut the top layer of the incision and redo it with even thicker incisions. So recovery was really rough.
Yeah. That's the worst part, is this healing.
Yeah. And having it redone 2 weeks later, that was worse pain than the original surgery.
I believe it.
And yeah, then they had to put binder on. I'm not sure if you had to wear one of those after your surgery, but having this piece of elastic around you with a piece of foam pressing down, that was worse, because anytime you breathe, cough, anything like that, that was just the most painful thing ever for me. Like I remember like coming back from second surgery, I was in so much pain at one point, like I puked up, and then they had to move me from the stretcher to my bed. They moved me to clean the sheets, and that was, I remember almost wanting to scream. And I remember slightly letting out some not so fun words to the nurses.
I think they're trained for it though.
Yeah. So it was just one of those things where that was the roughest part. PT was fun for me just because one thing great about the LVAD floor at Herman is you overlook down one of the main stretches of going from Med Center downtown, and you see a lot of one of the main parts of Memorial Herman Park. So you got to see a lot of trees and stuff like that. So that was my motivation for like doing PT, is like I could go walk and go look outside, even if I couldn't go outside at the time. So seeing this luscious green park is what motivated me to keep going forward during recovery.
Nice. So after your setback and you get back home, what was your recovery like?
It was pretty easy. Like I got around, like I used electric cart. I went to Target like 2 days after I'd been back home for the second time. I think the biggest thing was just going back to our rehab and learning how to redo life and balance pretty much my little body. Because we have an 8-pound bag hanging off you, you're kind of want to slump around. I get used to just that alone. Because we, at the time, I had 2 dogs, a 70-pound big non-meat lab mix and a small dog. So I had to learn even walking them and doing life with that. It was just, it came with ease, but at the same time, it's difficult to relearn things. So,
I know that this one shoulder right here is probably the strongest muscle I got.
Yeah, that's the one actually, since I had my transplant, which now is about 6 weeks out, that is what's bugging me most. It's like, I'm so used to that bag hanging off. That's
Do you walk like this?
Like when I sleep, my shoulder's like cramping up and working. My wife used to be a massage therapist. Now she's a nurse. And now it's just, I'm like, hey, babe, you got to work this out for me a little bit. Just because it's now getting used to not having that weight there that I kind of compensated to. Like the first 2 weeks after transplant, it was like my balance was so off of relearning how to walk. That was just the side effects of meds and things. It was just like, how do I do this again?
So what was it like getting a call?
Man, I actually got 2 calls within 3 days.
Wow. Okay. I need your luck. I need you to pick out some lottery tickets for me.
Yeah. So I got a call that I was a secondary candidate that Saturday, which was February 27th, I believe. No, yeah, end of February, somewhere like that. That I was secondary. I was already told, like, hey, you're most likely not going to get it, but you're the closest candidate to him, behind them. So yeah. Then I got the call next morning. Hey, you didn't get it. I was like, cool. I thought it'd be like a few weeks away. Next call. Nope. That Monday, I was joking around with my wife, and I literally got that call in the middle of the day. She's on shift, actually. She works on the heart failure floor. She's on her break. I'm like, Cameron, I got the call. I'm headed up there right now. And so it was like a big celebration because when I'm admitted, I go to her floor.
Nice.
She can't be my nurse, but a lot of her friends and coworkers have invested into my story. So like they had a big celebration when I got the call. So it was very exciting for me. Like I started using TikTok about a year ago just to have that mental break for me. I remember getting TikTok like, hey, I got the call and I barely could hold back my emotions just because it was exciting. It was very much emotional. It was a 5-year journey for me. Like it almost was 5 years to the date that I got diagnosed with heart failure that I got my call. So it's kind of see that cycle to be like, hey, what we've been working for the 5 years, it's here now. It just was overwhelming to me.
Nice. So what was easier, or maybe what was more difficult? Which had the most difficult recovery, the transplant or the LVAD?
I think the LVAD, to be honest, because you're relearning a lot of things at once. You're relearning how to walk with that bag. You're relearning how to just be cautious of things. Transplant has its own set of difficulties. I feel like the LVAD recovery was a little harder for me. But I also think there's a little more support with the LVAD than I have had with transplant. But I also think that's kind of mixture because of COVID that has kind of thrown things out of whack a little bit. So I think it's kind of, for me, it's a little bit unfair, but at the same time, I think because of the PT, OT, and some of the focus that I had with the LVAD, that recovery was a little bit easier. But physical-wise, I think the transplant has been a little bit easier to recover from, just because you kind of know what to expect. You know your pain tolerance. You know what it's going to be like already. So you already know mentally what to expect going into it.
Did you have any issues with your incision this time with your transplant?
No, actually, because about a year ago, I swapped teams last summer. I went from Herman to Houston Methodist just because of insurance changes. And they have a little bit different policies and procedures. This time, instead of using the sutures and glue, they actually did staples all the way down. So by the time I left the hospital, which was 3 weeks after transplant, it already healed up.
Okay.
So even now, I'm having no issues. Anything healing-wise, it's already closed up. I know most people are supposed to drive to like the 8-12 week mark. I drove the first time yesterday just to kind of drive around my neighborhood and just feel like, hey, I need some normalcy a little bit.
Right. So what is your medicine regimen like after transplant?
It is so much more intense than LVAD.
Really?
Yeah, because you have to be a little more time specific on your transplant meds because they have to be 12 hours apart on some of them. And there's a lot more meds that you have to be cautious of, especially with the anti-rejection meds. You have to be like with LVAD, you can kind of skip a dose and take it like 4 or 5 hours later and be okay. With this, you can't do that. The other thing with the anti-rejection meds is like some of the vitamins and stuff you may take that's over the counter. You cannot do that because you're on this very strict regimen to make sure you don't have rejection of your heart. So LVAD meds were a lot easier to maintain. You have your warfarin, you have your blood pressure medicine, all of, like 4 or 5 meds you got to take. With transplant, I'm up to like 10 to 12 meds right now a day, plus my vitamins.
Now, do you think that would adjust as you get further along with your recovery?
I think at the year mark is where they're saying some of those might drop off. I know one med right now I'm taking should drop off here in the next few months because the heart I accepted they were exposed to Hep B.
Okay.
Hepatitis B, but it was not an active infection. So they're treating me just as precaution. So I know that medicine's going to drop off. And then, like, I also know I'm on antibiotics. I had the dry line infection back in December that went into my blood. So they have me on antibiotics now. That will be probably at the 6-month mark as well, where that drops off. Mm-hmm. But a lot of those meds I will be on for the rest of my life just because of having a foreign body, which is somebody else's heart inside mine, mm-hmm. just to make sure my body doesn't attack it.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so let's talk about the whole Hep C heart thing. That's something that my team has asked me, was I interested in? And I did a little bit of research, and I came back and was like, yeah, I mean, anything to get me a heart sooner, I'm with it.
Yeah, that's where I was at, because mine had Hep B. I'm like, Hep B, Hep C is a lot more treatable now mm-hmm. with medication than it was 15, 20 years ago. So I'm like, if it gets me a heart and it gets me back to a normality of living, then let's do it. Like, I was willing to kind of do anything. Like, I know they're doing some testing with heart in a box mm-hmm. where cardiac arrest, they revive the heart, put it in a box that circulates the blood. Mm-hmm. I didn't really try that out. I was just like, whatever to give me a heart.
Yeah, we just talked about that. That's the DCD transplant.
Yeah. That is something to do that I kind of think is cool. And also think that there's other testing that's kind of cool with even LVAD with the fully implantable coming up. But yeah, I think Hep C, Hep B is a lot more treatable now. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot more research doing that. Like, hey, they may be exposed to it, but guess what? Doesn't mean it's an active infection as well.
Right, right. All right, bro. So let's talk about some other things now. So I already know I'm asking just for the audience, but what are some of your hobbies?
I like doing photography as well on the side. Mm-hmm. I shoot both digital and I film. I shoot 35 millimeter and medium format film, so I collect old cameras and kind of flip them around just to play around with.
I saw your Canon AE1 the other day on Instagram.
So I have a Canon AE1, but I also have a Rolleiflex as well. So Rolleiflex is my pride and joy. I just got back from the shop. But yeah, so that's my fun, is just like doing that. I started developing my own film as well, just especially my black and white. Just that started beginning of COVID. Like, I can't leave the house, so what can I do inside? Mm-hmm. So yeah.
I did that when I was in high school. I took a class developing my film. I don't know if I want to go through that at home though.
It's not too bad at home. Like, there's a couple of kits at home that are pretty easy to do, especially just doing like a roll or two at a time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm still active in the coffee community here in Houston. Previously to the LVAD, I was a coffee roaster. So I still go to coffee shops, trying new coffees, things like that.
Awesome. So let me ask you this. Now that you have your transplant, are there any things you have to look out for as your caffeine intake with the coffee?
So they max you out at 16 ounces of black coffee a day. Mm-hmm. I don't drink that much black coffee in a day. Usually I only drink maybe 6 to 10 ounces. So you still have to keep your limitation on it, mm-hmm. but it's a lot better than when you had heart failure and all that, because you're not watching your food intake. Mm-hmm. And my team's not as picky as like, oh, you got to have only this amount of caffeine. So yeah.
Okay. So did you have diabetes before?
I was pre-diabetic previously to LVAD and the gastric sleeve. Then I got probably about maybe 4 or 5 months later, after being on Januvia and losing the weight, I was no longer diabetic.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, but thanks to prednisone, I became diabetic again because of the steroids, mm-hmm. which now they tapered it down. So I started off at 30 milligrams prednisone. Prior to transplant, I'm now down to 5 milligrams. So my blood sugar has dropped down to somewhat normal. I may only have to do maybe 1 unit of insulin every few days, depending on how I eat. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Like the last few days were kind of like my sweet stuff. So I had to take the unit like every day, but yeah.
So I just had my my Canon AE1 refurbished. I don't have it where I can grab it right now, but my mine was my father's. And it was like the first camera that got me interested into photography. And my father passed away maybe about 10 years ago. And it's just been sitting in my closet. And you got a little bit to do with me taking it out the closet and taking it to the shop and getting it fixed up. So I want to start shooting with regular film in the next week or so.
And And film has changed my mindset of photography. It's made me slow down. Like my camera is actually my father-in-law. He passed away 4 or 5 years ago now. Mm-hmm. He shot a lot of the pageants, local pageants, stuff like that. So that's where I got the camera from. Is my mother-in-law had it just sitting in the closet. It's like, hey, I want to shoot film again. Mm-hmm. Mind if I used it? And she's like, yeah, it's better than sitting in a closet. So yeah, that's where kind of my started of film went started, is just, hey, my father-in-law had this camera, let me try it out. Mm-hmm. And it makes you, shooting film makes you slow down and think about the process a little more.
Yeah.
Because you have to think about how your film is going to be. You have to think a little bit more about the exposure, because like with digital, you can just change everything you want to right then and there. With film, you're like, I got to wait a week or two to see how this develops out. And then at that point, you're like, I really didn't like that. Now I got to redo this all over again. So yeah, so it's been a learning process for me of like, what film do I like? What don't I like? And how do I shoot with these conditions and stuff like that?
I have a mentor, Mr. Chuck. Shout out to Mr. Chuck, Chuck's Camera Shop. And when I first got into, well, I won't say back into photography. I used to do it as a hobby. But, you know, once COVID started, you start reaching out for some of those old activities you used to do. And when I got my M50, I shot a wedding. And I shot like 2,000 shots. And he was like, you know, when I used to shoot a wedding, I could do a whole wedding in like 4 or 5 rolls. You know, 36 shots a roll or 24 shots a roll. And he'll do the whole wedding. He was like, you got to slow down and make each shot count. And he was like, once you do that, your digital shooting will slow down too.
Yep. That's why I do a lot of street photography, and like, you can't miss that moment. If you miss that moment's gone. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of shots where I did when like George Floyd protest here last year. It's like, there's some shots I got, it's like, you can't replicate that moment. Mm-hmm. You can't take that emotion that was in that moment.
Right, be like, hey, can y'all do that again?
It's like, you can't do that over again.
Right.
So that's where I started shooting film at the same time, and that's where that mindset came from. It's like, I can't duplicate this moment over again. It's like, this is it. And that's where I'm learning how to do better storytelling because of that as well, because my shooting is slowed down. It's like, how do I capture this emotion in this moment versus just, oh, click, there we go. See you later. And just walk away from that moment.
Yeah, it's making me take my time a lot more. And I think it really makes you think about your settings, like your ISO and your shutter speed a lot more. Even though, yes, it's way easier to just pick up my digital and go. Now, in the back of my mind, I'm like, what if this was film?
Yep. That's what I do, especially with like my Rolleiflex, like it doesn't have a built-in meter. So I'm happy to take I use a light meter on my phone and get the app out, and it's like, let's measure this out. How is it going to appear and stuff like that? It makes you really, like I shot at a local coffee shop the other day to just get out because they have an outdoor garden. I can be by myself, my wife, and not be around people. It's like, there's a shot of this spear. I put it one that I took digitally, but it's like I did one on film. It's just like, how am I going to get the same replica on film? Mm-hmm. And like, how do I change this setting here to make this pop out a little bit more and stuff like that?
Yeah. And I take these tangents on my podcast because I want people to know that we are more than just heart failure. Yeah. We have hobbies, we have desires, we have families, we have things we want to do. And your LVAD / transplant is just allowing you to do those things. It shouldn't become who you are.
Yeah, that's one thing a lot of people, like I've talked to a couple of people last week that are getting LVAD surgeries. Just because thanks to social media, it's like connect with them. Like, you gotta find your why. Because if you don't find your why, your identity becomes, I'm now tied down even by this. Mm-hmm. We have an anti-smoking ad here in Texas that's going around with the LVAD patient. Like I posted a change on TikTok about it. It's like, you're not anchored down to our power module at night. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, we're only limited our 20, 25 feet for how long the cord exactly is. But it's like, we're not tied down to our batteries. Mm-hmm. Like there's so much more I got to do because of LVAD than I did with just having heart failure. Mm-hmm. Because I wasn't tired all the time. So guess what? I can spend time with my wife. I can go out and enjoy time with her versus just feeling like, oh, I'm just another lump on the log. I can't do anything. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think the mindset of people going into it has to find their why and motivation.
Yeah. And I think that once you go through either process, it makes you value your quality of life a whole lot more. Like, you don't take as much for granted. You know, it's, every day I wake up, I thank God I'm up. It's another day that, you know, without my LVAD, I probably wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah, that's for me. Like, I was literally given 6 months to a year to live. And I went 18 months from that day when I was told that to get my transplant. So without the LVAD, I would not be here right now.
Great. All right, John, let the people know how they can get in touch with you, how they can catch you on social media, and all that good stuff.
So you mostly catch me on my Instagram or TikTok at thejohnsanny, and that's the best way to catch up with me. I'm also starting a project called the Recycled Organ Club, kind of really bringing awareness to the LVAD and organ transplant and donation, especially with us young guys, just because it is something that sometimes we overlook.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the best place to catch me is the John Sanny or the Recycled Organ Club.
Sir, it was good talking to you. Hopefully I would love to have you back again. And we could talk about progress and cameras and photography and all that good stuff.
Anytime, definitely.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is LVAD Talk. I'm your host, Sean, and this is John, and we are out.